Let's get into this Byron Buxton conversation because, again, it's one of those things where every time the trade deadline rolls around, Phillies fans say, man, I'd love to have Byron Buxton. And I think a lot of people would like to have Byron Buxton, the talent. Byron Buxton is a supreme talent. The problem lies twofold. The first, he has a no-trade clause. The second, he has a pretty sizable injury history that I think is hard to overlook. So with that being said, Dan Hayes, who covers the Twins for The Athletic, said that Buxton may be open to waiving his no-trade clause for certain contenders if the if the Twins start to, or continue to sell off their big pieces. Now, obviously, they've done a lot of that over the last trade deadline, and if they continue to do it, that's, I think, where Buxton would get consideration. Here's the thing with Byron Buxton. As I said before, when he's healthy, he is an elite-level player. There's no question about it. An elite defender, 100th percentile in sprint speed last season. The offensive productivity last year was excellent. And in fact, I think not only did he put together a healthy season, but also put together basically a career year because of the healthy season. His 126 games played are the second most in his career. His 488 at-bats are the most. Here's where he had the most in every statistical category that I'm about to name. Hits, 129. Home runs, 35. RBI, 83, and the 24 stolen bases are the second most of his career. So, Ethan, the big deal about this is twofold. One, can he replicate 2025? And two, can he stay healthy for another full season? And I think the problem with answering these questions is question one only really gets answered by question two, but question one seems more answerable than question two. Can he stay healthy for another season? I got no freaking clue. Byron Buxton is a guy who over the last 8 years, basically, has played over 100 games 3 times. Last year, the year before, which was 102, and 2017, he played 140. In between those seasons, he played 28 in 2018, 87 in 2019, played 39 of 60 in 2020, 61 in 22, 92 in 23, and 85 in 22, and then 85 in 23. Betting on him staying healthy is probably not a good bet. However, if he stays healthy, betting on him having a good season is probably a good bet. The problem is, I don't want to make the second bet without having assurance of the first bet. That's where the hard part about this conversation comes in.
100% agree. And it's, again, we talk about correlation in terms of injuries. I mean, you'd have to go back and look at what he had dealt with every single year he had missed time and either find correlation or not. I feel like there might be a little bit. I feel like, and this is just totally stringing out of my memory, but I feel like his knees have been a little bit of a problem. So in that regard, maybe, especially as a center fielder, when we were talking beforehand about, a lot of the advanced analytics on, what he's good at in terms of playing center field and what he's not good at. So that might play a little bit of a role. I'd say maybe like 20%. But again, some stuff, especially in baseball where, freak accidents can happen all the time, just simply how a pitcher can throw. You can break fingers all the time, and that's totally out of your control.
I forgot about the knee. The knee is problematic because it is a recurring issue. So he had the issue after the weird slide back in 22, and then he also has already had knee issues in the past, and then he had tendonitis in his left knee on a rehab assignment in 23. This guy, that's the recurring, that's the injury-prone thing we talk about. He also has had left shoulder injury, fractured left hand from being hit on a pitch, concussions, migraines, and various soft tissue injuries like rib cage inflammation and hamstring issues. All of those things unrelated to each other, but it's hard for me to say, yeah, man, I think he'll play 130 games again next year.
100%.
Because he's played just shy of 900 games in his career, 898. 228 of them have come in the last 2 seasons. 368 of them have come in 3 seasons. So you're telling me that 368 of 898, which means that only 530 other games have been played in 8 seasons? 530, and now granted, 2020 puts a wrinkle into things because there was only 60 games. But 530 games over 8 seasons is an average of 66.25 games a year. So while I expect him to produce when he's on the field, like I think about 2022, he played 92 games and hit 28 home runs. He was an all-star for a reason. It was an unbelievable season. I think about 2021, off to an incredible start. He only played 61 games, hit 19 home runs, and hit over 300 with a +1 OPS. When the guy's on the field, there's no question about it. He's an elite level player. When you start to think about how often is he not on the field, you think about him, you think about the Trouts, right? Like at some point, you're just not on the field and you can't do anything about it. Like teams can't do anything about it. So that's kind of the big question is like, if he were to waive his no trade clause, how do you keep him healthy? Freak injuries happen, but would you have to have him play some DH to mitigate that? You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about just the Phillies. I'm talking about any team that acquires him. Would you have to have him get off his feet in center field a little bit, have him DH, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 times a year, then have him play like 80 games in center field or whatever it might be to mitigate that? But I can't guarantee you that he's going to play another 125 games.
And if you trade for him and he needs to DH and you keep Kyle,
then Schwarber's playing left field.
yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
There's never a bad thing about having too many good players, but at some point you do have to have some positional fit. And I don't mind Schwarber playing 10 or 12 games in left field. God, if he played 10 or 12 games in center field, there's something awful happened. I don't mind him playing 10 or 12 games in left field, but I don't want him playing 40. And I don't know if that's avoidable and I think that's the case for everybody that acquires a Byron Buxton. So that's our big deal segment of the day. It's brought to you by our friends over at Cherry Hill Jeep. Again, cherryhilljeep.com to get in on all of the incredible offers that Cherry Hill Jeep has to offer. Or you can just stop over any of the bridges. Be right there. Their complex is incredible. Let's continue this conversation, though, Ethan. Remember the other day we talked about Ketel Marte and who would be a good fit for Marte, and we talked about the Mets. I hate to say this. There's another NL East team, the second day in a row that we've talked about potential hypothetical trades. I think there's another NL East team that would make sense for a Buxton deal if the Twins wanted to move him and if he wanted to move the no trade clause. Now, again, the no trade clause is step number one. If he says, I don't want to go there, it's a moot point. Like, if the White Sox called and were like, hey, man, we're really interested in Byron Buxton, Buxton would be like, kick rocks, no interest. The team I think he makes a lot of sense on is a team that like vastly underperformed last year. And I think in large part was due to a slew of injuries that they had and a really bad start to the season. I'll be honest with you, I think he makes a ton of sense for the Atlanta Braves. The Braves had a rash of injuries last year. Jurickson Profar got suspended 4 games into the year. Their pitching staff was just riddled with injury. They missed a ton of time. Really over the last 2 seasons, the Braves offense has missed a ton of time. I think Byron Buxton makes a ton of sense for the Braves if he's interested in going there. So here's the first thing. He's from Georgia. Now, he's from Baxley, Georgia, which is 3 hours south of Atlanta. I don't know if that means a whole lot, but he is from Georgia. I don't know if that means something to him. The second thing, the Braves now have several former Minnesota Twins coaches on staff. If he likes those dudes, that might mean something as well. So assuming that the Braves don't have to move Michael Harris in the deal to acquire Byron Buxton, which I would think they probably wouldn't want to, that puts the Braves in an advantageous spot where they could rotate Harris and Buxton in center and left, or you could put one of them in left and have Profar DH, or you could get Ronald Acuna off his feet in right field a little bit more and have him DH. Like, you could mix and match your DH spot with these 4 outfielders that you have. And then I think the ultimate one is with Profar DH. It's a super intriguing outfield if you were to go like Buxton in left, Harris in center, and Acuna in right. because we know that Buxton and Harris are both elite level defenders, right? Buxton was in the 81st percentile or something like that in range this year. Michael Harris was in the 95th percentile of range this year. He had an 8 outs above average. And then Acuna, who I think, Ethan, if we're being fair, is a less than stellar defender, but has a rocket attached to his arm. And that's why he plays right, is because he's got a cannon in right field. So you would have elite level coverage in left and center. You could shade Harris over to right to kind of offset the bad defense from Acuna. And then you've got the cannon of the right fielder. That's an intriguing defense to me. And I think it's an intriguing team where you could go really any one of different which ways, where your top 4 would look something like Acuna, Buxton, Olsen, Riley, Albies. That starts to feel like a pretty formidable team if they're healthy, man.
Isn't it a dream when those players can play at least average defense versus, like, we talk about, how scary the idea is of putting
Schwarber out there, how bad Castellanos has been the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. Yep.
I think Buxton makes a ton of sense for the Braves. Now, again, it all relies upon Buxton wanting to move the no trade clause or not. I think that Buxton would make a lot of sense for the Atlanta Braves.